What's up, you guys? So, I am here with an update on all of the hoopla around Ebony Williams' dating preferences. I never thought I would be doing this video. Like I said before, I don't do too much dating content, and that's why I didn't cover it before because I feel like Ebony Williams or any other woman or man, I feel like your dating preferences are your own. I don't feel like it's up for debate. I don't feel like you have to compromise. I just feel like you're attracted to what you're attracted to, and that's it. It doesn't have to be equal opportunity when it comes to dating. But I decided to cover this story because now Angela Rye is stepping into the chat. Angela Rye has entered the chat, and it seems like she's coming for Ebony Williams. If you listen to what she's saying, she takes issue with a lot of the things that Ebony Williams has said over the past 2 or 3 days. So, you guys, we're going to start from the beginning. It was really just a short clip of Iyanla Vanzant interviewing with Ebony K. Williams, and it went viral because Ebony K. Williams said she wouldn't date a bus driver unless he owned the bus.
Know that you've said that you cannot teach a man or tell a man how to be a man. So I will not ask you to indict men in this question. But I do want you to speak, Iyanla, to how women need to position ourselves so that we can be in our divinity, so we can have our crowns right, how we can create and not build, when some of us, quite frankly, feel that the men that are available to us, and I'm talking about across the color spectrum, across the age spectrum, trust me, I've done them all, they are not positioned to protect nor provide because of some of the statistics we just talked about. They're not earning the incomes. They're not having the resources, and some of them are not even showing up in the leadership.
Would you date a bus driver? Would you date
if he owns the bus? If he owns it. If he owns the bus.
See, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Okay.
Because the standards and requisites, and I'm not talking about him laying on his sofa playing video games all day. I'm not talking about that. But the standards and the criteria that we use to measure men is off for who we are as women and who they are in this society. I would date a bus driver if he loved driving the bus, if he was a man of integrity, if he was good to his mama, if he treated me well, I would date a bus.
Nope.
So being that Iyanla Vanzant is from a different generation, like she's an older woman, she's from a different generation, her response doesn't surprise me because back in her day, like when she was a young girl and dating, like she wouldn't have been allowed to have a bank account. Like a lot of people look back in the 50s and 60s and even the 70s and they wonder why women stayed with their husbands more than they do now. And it's because it was a different world then. Like women weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts until the 70s. This is a fact. It wasn't until 1974 when the Equal Credit Opportunity Act passed that women in the US were granted the right to open a bank account on their own. Technically, women won the right to open a bank account in the 1960s, but many banks still refused to let women do so without a signature from their husband. So on the one hand, I understand Iyanla's point where Ebony asked her, how do you position yourself as a woman? And Iyanla says, basically don't prioritize his income, prioritize his character. I understand that point on a general level, but I also understand it's coming from the point of view of a woman from a different generation where women needed men. But in any case, Ebony K. Williams received a lot of backlash after making her comment about not wanting to date a bus driver unless he owned the bus. So here is where Angela Rye enters the chat. Angela Rye enters the chat, and I want you guys to hear what she has to say. She took it really personal, as if someone was disparaging her family or not wanting to date members of her family when Ebony was just stating her dating preferences.
Sometimes it's just your Wi-Fi. So I'm just going to start over again. I'm here to address the confusion that I personally had about the bigotry of low expectations, the mediocre jobs that we're calling, or not but some folks are calling the folks who drive buses and folks who are traditionally service workers. And I think that sometimes, as attorneys, we can forget about where we came from and how important those roles are. And so I'm here because I thought long and hard about what it meant to come from a grandmother who was a nurse, a grandfather who had his own electrician business and made it in the jet chat, being an electrician. My grandmother, Granny, who was an inspector for the quality control line at Boeing. My grandfather, Gramps, who was a Pullman porter. Shout out to A. Philip Randolph. And all of them were service workers. All of them at some point could have been deemed mediocre. And what I would say to you all just as a caveat and to just lay this groundwork initially on a micro level, we to fail, and at every turn we have overcome. Whether you're looking at the Black women who continue to formulate and develop businesses in this country only to hit a ceiling of 70 access. I don't know what's going on with this connection, but all I'm saying is I'm doing all that I can with the gifts that I know that I have, the potential that I know that I'm walking in, and that does not beget access to a cap table. Right? Especially because we know how we look, we know who we are. We're very clear about all of that. So what I would say is, if we are mediocre at all as a people, I'm just speaking very generally here. If we are mediocre at all as a people, the culture, if we're mediocre at all, it is because of the very whack ass circumstances we've been placed in, and we've thrived and we've survived. And so what I would say to us is, to avoid the Bill Cosby rhetoric, like we've seen where that's landed him. We don't have any place for that in our culture. We don't need to pull ourselves up by bootstraps when we, for whatever reason, have not been given the boots. We know what the reason is. So you can't pull yourself up. You can't condition yourself out of mediocrity. You have to be provided a different kind of playing field. And so I would challenge all of us to focus on equity, to focus on access, to focus on the things that change the conditioning, the current circumstance, the environment. Those are the things we need to focus on. And meanwhile, we need to shout out every person in our family, every person in our community that makes a difference for us, that has made our lives possible. There are folks in our community who were able to buy their first homes, those homes still in their families, because they were in these mediocre jobs, being exceptional, doing the best they could with what they have. And everybody else who's coasting, that's up to them. But we've got to be very careful with our words. So what I would tell you all is that we should continue to stay resilient, that we should continue to live and exist in our power, that we should continue to be overcomers and conquerors, and know that there is better for us, and we especially will be better off if we continue to challenge the system and change the game. But in the meantime, we don't need to boo-boo or poo-poo on anybody and where they currently are, where they find themselves. We do not know how they got there. We don't know what else they're trying to do, what else they have going on for themselves. That's just not our role. So I hope that this clears it up for some of us. And this is also a great moment for Black folks. You know why? It's very clear we're not monolithic. We see things different ways. Language triggers us in different ways. We need to be responsible with our words and be very clear about what we're trying to communicate. So what I hope that y'all hear from me today is I stand with the sanitation worker, the bus driver, the school teacher, my auntie who was a librarian before she passed, my uncle who was a painter before he passed, everybody who's made it.
As you guys just heard, she took it really personal. She's talking about her auntie and her uncle who were librarians and milkmen and things like that. She took it really personal, as if her family was being insulted just because Eboni K. Williams doesn't want to date a bus driver. It's amazing the way people hear things. So you guys, leave a comment and let me know what you think about Angela Rye's response to Eboni Williams. Why do you think she took it so personal that Eboni doesn't want to date a bus driver? Why do you think the situation is going viral? As always, thanks for watching.